Hi, this is Kara from the Special Needs Mom podcast.
And this is Angela from Especially Organized, Sensible Solutions for Special Needs Moms.
We have this heart for special needs moms. And so we thought, you know what, let's combine forces. And we have come up with what we're calling the Purge Party. And you can pretty much guess what it is. It's a party where we're going to come together and we're going to purge or, in general, accomplish a goal, a small goal together. So we have set this for January 27th, starting at 8 o'clock for my Pacific Coast people.
Which means 11 o'clock for all of you on the East Coast. So this is an opportunity. If you have something on your to-do list that has just been stuck there and you are wanting to move it up on the list, you're wanting to tackle, maybe it's a space or an area of your home or a category in your home that has just needed a little time and attention. This is your opportunity for you to be online with us while you work and have access for us to help you answer your questions, help guide you, and just serve you for those 2 hours.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you can tell like what we've designed is just this very high level of support for that project that you just haven't been able to tackle on your own. The thing that we are envisioning is that you get to leave this purge party feeling so accomplished because you did the thing. You started the year off getting that thing done that you were stuck on last year. And so it's a momentum builder, if you will. You can go ahead and sign up. We have a link ready for you. And we are offering this for $40 for the whole experience.
Absolutely. And we hope you'll join us. I think it's going to be really fun. It's going to be a great group of moms of special needs kids. So we all get each other. We all have an understanding of what it's like to have something on our to-do list, but just we haven't been able to tackle it yet. So I hope that you will join us. We're super excited to bring this to you, and we are thrilled to work with you.
All right. We'll see you all there. Hi, I'm Kara Riska, life coach, wife, and the mother of 4 incredible and unique kids. It wasn't all that long ago that my son received a diagnosis that had my world come crashing down. I completely lacked the ability to see past the circumstances, which felt impossible, and the dreams I once had for my life and family felt destroyed. Fast forward past many years of surviving and not at all thriving, and you'll see a mom who trusts that she can handle anything that comes her way and has access to the power and grace that once felt so completely lacking. I started the Special Needs Mom podcast to create connection and community with moms who find themselves up against what feels impossible. My intention is to spark the flare of possibility in your own life and rekindle the dreams that you hold impossible now. This isn't a podcast about your special needs child. This is a podcast about you. If you're a mom who feels anxious, alone, or stuck, then you are in the right place. Welcome. Well, hello there, my special needs mom. Welcome back to the Special Needs Mom podcast. It's really good to be with you today. It's kind of funny, actually. Every time I start recording, I have this feeling where I'm like, oh, I get to hang out with my special needs mom podcast listeners again, which is kind of funny because obviously I'm alone in my closet, but I really feel connected to you as I prepare the episode, as I record the episode. And so I hope that in return, you feel connected with and connected to me. Today's episode is going to be the first of a series that I'm doing called Back to School. I know, real creative, but it's the season of back to school for most moms. Of course, there's some people that have different schedules, and of course, some people listening from different countries. So we honor all of you, and it still will apply as we enter the season of transition. So today I'm going to be talking about mostly transition and kind of creating some space for that. But I also wanted to add in this extra little commentary, I guess, on even just kind of how I'm processing what's happening in the world as it relates to being a special needs mom. So I was down at the hospital for the annual brain scan for my son as we check for a recurrent brain tumor. Even though it's a very simple procedure, and I'm not altogether at all concerned about the anesthesia or even the impact of the procedure. He's always done quite well. I've experienced a lot more heaviness and a lot more just triggering experiences being down there, really being in the conversation of, is my son okay? As I was sitting there processing, as he was actually in the MRI machine, I have usually about an hour and a half to myself, where I usually go eat breakfast and kind of just have a few minutes to myself. And I kind of actually usually look forward to this time. And it's interesting over the last 10 years, how my experience of being there has changed. And this particular time, what was really interesting is I was experiencing this heaviness, this hardness of being there. It was on top of what's going on in the world. As obviously everybody knows, the world has a lot going on right now between, of course, COVID. That is not new, but it's certainly still ever pressing an issue. Afghanistan, what's happening across the world. Of course, Haiti, and here in California now we have fires. Not in my area, but it is part of the world's experience. Also, I'm sure it's not new to you to think, oh my gosh, this is a lot to process. This is a lot to be with. And I was sitting there, and I guess I was kind of grappling with this myself. Do I actually have to hold all of this? Or can I let my fellow community members hold some of this for me? That it's enough for me just to hold my son, to hold space for him, for myself, for my immediate family, to be with this. That not everybody has to stop and engage in the conversation of what's happening. That's kind of what I was thinking about. And I struggled a little bit, to be honest, like, is that okay? What if everybody did that? It's kind of like the idea of if everybody picked a flower in the national forest, then there would be no flowers. And so it felt like a wrongness to think, okay, well, I'm going to just not ignore it, but I'm not going to focus my energy on it. I guess that's more what it was. And that really is my decision at this point, that I'm going to really kind of shield myself from immersing myself in the news to understand what's happening. I will probably go in real quick to understand what's happening and then go right back out. But I'm not going to commit to taking up a lot of energy for that. Right now, my world needs me, especially now with the season we're transitioning into. My world demands all of me right now. And I think this is very unique to special needs moms, that because of the demands of our children, of what they require to keep them alive, in many cases, to keep them safe, to keep ourselves in a position where we can give at the level that we need to give to support them, that I think it takes a kind of a radical attitude to do that. And so I do think this is a little radical. And so it's a little hard for me to be a little radical. I'd much rather just be blending with the crowd, doing the quote unquote right thing, kind of being safe through being invisible. But I don't think that serves me. I don't think that serves you. And I don't think that serves our children. And I don't think it serves the world. So evaluate where you're at. Maybe you're in a season where you're like, I feel we're solid. We're moving along. I feel really good. And so maybe you will decide to get a little bit more involved in the outer world. Awesome. We need you to do that. Maybe you're not at that place. And I would say, awesome. Take care of your own. That's okay. It's okay to just hold your world. Okay. I'd really love to know your thoughts on that. You know how to find me. Reach out to me and we can talk about it, because clearly you can tell I'm a little in process with it myself. I have so this is a good example of what it looks like to essentially evaluate your thoughts, to wonder about them, and then to notice when you're judging. So for myself, as I think about this, I immediately have a lot of things, judgments that come up that I'm like, is that okay? Am I wrong? Is it too selfish? So certainly this is something that I am in process with. I'm not like smooth sailing over here. I want you to see that that is definitely part of the process. And I have a commitment to myself to not give out of obligation, but it requires me to break a lot of social norms and especially push up against my own limiting thoughts. And it's very uncomfortable. So essentially, I'm inviting you to be uncomfortable with me. Okay? We got to stick together. Now we need each other more than ever. Let's transition to talk about transitions. Do you see what I did there? That was so good. I didn't even plan that. No, for real. So let's talk about transitions. Obviously, with the return of school, the school year is a very unique time for moms, I think, because traditionally, and most commonly, I say, moms are doing more of the children management. I'm not saying this is right or wrong. I'm just saying that it's commonly how it goes. So as kids go back to school, it often drives a schedule shift or responsibility shift for mothers. I know that's the case because my husband's job is a little less time flexible, that I have been the one to help get kids to school. And in some cases, our nanny would help get them home from school, or in some cases, he would be able to do that. So we have a big team over here, but regardless to say, I think you get that it's a time of change and transition. So many changes and transitions. So there's the schedule, like the actual demands of life definitely changes. But the transition of children being home to going back to the public, in my case, public schools. I don't know. Obviously, you may be going to public schools or you may have a different situation. But there's a shift. And with these shifts comes, I think, a lot of excitement, a lot of anticipation. But it also can come with a lot of wonkiness and clunkiness. And just like we know that kids, many of them struggle with transitions, especially our special needs kids, typically with kids, we go out of our way to create support for them, to create space for them, to create the expectation that they're going to get a little funky when it comes to transitioning. So when they get home from school, we know they're going to act like little turds. They're going to be loud and demanding and very messy. And that we would expect. We wouldn't expect them to be little angels when they come home. And so I guess really what I want to point out here is let's remember our humanness as moms too. Just like we create a lot of space for our kids to be a little wonky during transition, let's give ourselves that same space. So let's talk about how do you support yourself during this transition? An easy way to kind of enter into this conversation is to ask yourself the same questions that you would ask as you prepare your child for this season, right? So firstly, I think is acknowledging what it is. This is a change. Giving it a name. Like maybe you could, obviously, I mean, it's back to school season, but you can come up with a fun name. Sometimes we do a lot of funky names in our house, and just having a name for something is something that I think helps, in some cases, bring some humor to it. So like on the anniversary of my son's tumor resection, we call that tumor termination day. And we celebrate it and we grieve it all together. But having a name for it is really valuable to us. So maybe you come up with, you have a little family meeting, come up with a name for this transitional season back to school. Maybe another question that you ask yourself is, how can you make this easier? Like literally, remember that? I think it's Staples, the easy button. I want one of those. I need like 5 of them, 5 in every room. So maybe it's ordering dinner on a day that's especially busy. Maybe it's ordering dinner like the whole first week of school. I have no idea. It's going to be so unique, and you have to customize this for your desires, for your abilities, and for everything that is your unique circumstance. So what's right for somebody is certainly not going to be right for everybody. So maybe it is adding a cleaner to the schedule, saying, hey, this is a season that's typically very demanding for moms. Even though these kids now are back at school, it does change a lot for everybody. So maybe getting a cleaner to make it easier. I don't know. That might help. Maybe you ask a neighbor to bring in your trash bins. I mean, that is like the smallest thing. But I think I put this in here because I'm like, sometimes even the smallest things of having somebody help with that is receiving it. It feels so good, and it brings a sense of community. I was on a walk this morning and walking my dog, and I was kind of observing some neighbors across the street as I was walking, and I don't know them. It was a little further from my house. They kind of looked at me, and one of the guys, he's like a big guy. He like just did this real big jubilant wave, and I waved back, and it just felt so good. So like that is an example. It's a very small gesture, but as he waved, I received it, waved back, and I don't know, maybe he's probably not talking about it right now, but that's why I put this little example of like having your neighbor bring in your bins, asking them, hey, do you mind, like Wednesday's going to be really busy for me. Do you mind just bringing my bins into the curb? Like, yeah, I get it. You could do it yourself, but maybe it would be a gift for them to be able to help you. Okay. Another thing I want you to consider is not new. It's not going to be a new idea here, but it is something I want you to focus on. It's the idea of filling your cup. I think this is especially important as, of course, a special needs mom. I was working with a client this week, and we were talking about her cup, and really she's asking some really good questions like, how do I get through some of these hardest moments with my daughter? What we kind of talked about is that her cup actually needed to be more like a swimming pool, because her reservoir needed to be that big and deep for it to create enough space for her to handle the extreme challenges that she has with her daughter. And so maybe you need to upsize your cup. Maybe you've been like working from a teacup and it's full, but it just maybe you need to like upgrade to one of those nice big coffee mugs. Those big ones that you're like, wow, that is going to be intense if I drink all that coffee. This is a continual question. There will not be a time where you're like, oh my gosh, my cup is full and it stays full. No, like constantly it's spilling out the bottom. It's getting splashed out. You're drinking it down. It is constantly emptying. So not from a place of, oh my gosh, you have to work really hard to fill your cup, but from a place of love and care for yourself. How can you continue to deposit into that cup so that you have this reservoir always available when you need it? Because as a special needs mom, I think it's a very unique, anybody could have an unexpected event and need to be able to pull from those reservoirs. I think as a special needs mom, it happens a lot more frequently, and I think a lot more deeply. And so I think our cups need to be bigger and they need to be fuller more consistently so that we can navigate this and be the moms that have enough space for ourselves to create the space that our children need. And when I say space, what I mean is really having it's almost like being a sponge, a soft place to land, to where when these kids bump up against us, not physically necessarily, but as their behaviors or their medical challenges or all the challenges of even just scheduling their appointments, as those come up, that we have the cushiness, the sponginess to be able to bounce back easily from all the demands. And so that's when I'm talking about our cup overflowing or our cup being full. We'll know it's full when our kid does something aggravating. And we allow it to it's still probably aggravating or annoying, but it doesn't trigger us. We don't find ourselves yelling at our kid or yelling at our spouse because we're actually really mad about our kid. That's how you'll know, is you'll have the bounce back ability. You'll be very spongy and you'll bounce back very quickly and easily. You'll notice this happened even to me this last week. I'll use it as an example. I noticed after my son's MRI, I was emotionally depleted, right? So my cup had really taken a big spill that day as I navigated the challenges of the hospital for my personal well-being. And so I noticed on Wednesday and even into Thursday that I was a little shorter with the people around me. And I was aware, I was like, oh, this is interesting. My cup is not full here. And so I gave myself luscious rest. I gave myself luscious conversations. I really talked through a lot of the challenges with some specific friends and coaches. I worked through some of the judgment I was having on myself, still working through some of that. And even just acknowledging the idea that, oh, wow, this is why I feel snappy right now. That was valuable to me. Back to filling cup, just to give you some even tangible things to look at that may be places to start would be breathing. Making sure you're actually breathing. Most of us, we're like, I get to like, and my kids aren't back at school yet. They don't go back until a week after next. But I'll get to the point where I've gotten everybody to where they need to go. And I finally breathe. I realize I've been almost holding my breath, trying to get everybody where they need to go. So maybe breathing and making sure you have an awareness that you're not continuing to hold your breath. That's what we do as humans when we feel stressed and scared is we hold our breath, right? So you actually have an ability to override that. And then your body has that feedback loop. When you actually start to breathing, it actually calms down. Okay. So maybe physical movement. This is interesting. I love running and I run frequently I love Orange Theory. But lately I've just really wanted to walk with my dog. So I'm still getting exercise. So I'm still getting that outlet, but it's just the idea of pushing myself during this last season. It hasn't been right for me. And so running for me is pushing myself a little bit more than walking. And so I've walked and it's been amazing. I've loved it. Another thing to look at might be prayer or meditation, journaling, kind of like any combination of those together. Usually happens at a morning time. Doesn't have to. But I mean, when my clients actually go from saying they should do this to like actually doing it, they're amazed at how a small shift of doing something like this has a big, big impact on their entire day and overall life. Something else to kind of fill your cup is considering processing some of your trauma, processing some of the emotions that you have experienced along the way as a special needs mom. So this can be done via therapy. There's a lot of different therapy techniques that help do that. There's a lot of book resources, and reach out to me if you want some that have been very helpful to me. But this is an area that I know myself I'm going to be investing more deeply in this coming year. Another one would be managing your emotions. Really, this is a skill, I've talked about it a lot on the podcast, but this is a skill that we didn't learn in school, and most of us did not learn from the example of our parents. And so actually being able to manage our emotions, and I use manage very intentionally, because just like you wouldn't just set your kids out and be like, okay, good luck, have fun, you would be intentional. You would teach them. You would invest time with them. And this is how we can be with our emotions. We can get acquainted with them. We can be fascinated by them. We can get familiar with them. And so this also goes to managing your worrying thoughts. I'm going to be doing a whole episode actually coming up on worry and managing worry. So that'll be coming up in the coming months. So those are some tangible examples. And this was funny as I was also thinking, how would I support my children as we manage this transition? Sleep. I would make sure that they get good sleep. I would have them go to bed early, transitioning from summer where we got to stay up a little later, wake up a little later. As I will adjust their schedule, so will I adjust mine to make sure that I get my beauty sleep. And also, I've been really embracing the idea of slowing down and just laying down for about 20 minutes during the day to really just less from a sleep perspective, but just allowing my nervous system to kind of calm for a few minutes. I tend to run a little hot when it comes to my nervous function. It seems to be activated quite easily, which I love because I can feel a lot of things. But sometimes it becomes overwhelming where it's too much stimulation. And so for me, just even getting a few minutes to kind of calm myself is very helpful. Something else you might do is this is a little bit more on the pregame strategy, a little more offensive, where you look at your schedule over the next couple weeks. Knowing you're in a season of transition, what might you change structurally to make it easier? Again, this kind of goes to the easy category. Maybe you have some appointments that don't need to happen, so you'll push those out. Maybe you had some commitments with friends that you want to do, but you're not sure if it's going to be right for you at that time. Maybe on the other side, you're an extrovert and you know that you have to have some connection with friends during the season so that you are energized and fueled. Again, it's very individual. Something that we also do for our kids that I don't think we do very well for ourselves is really give space for breakdowns. And when I say breakdown, it's really kind of recognizing that things are not going to go well all of the time. And sometimes it's going to get messy. And we do a good job of giving our kids space with this, but we don't do a good job with ourselves. Create margin so that when breakdowns happen, you have space for them. You're not so packed full that you're like, oh my gosh, this is a problem. You have space. Something that is valuable is to kind of, as we transition from one to another, is to take with you what was really valuable from the season. As you close it out and say goodbye, we do this with New Year's and kind of when we go into a new year, really kind of look back at the summer and to back during times of COVID and see what you really loved that you don't want to let go. And maybe ask how you might incorporate what you learned into the new season, or maybe even just simply grieve the ending of this. I know myself, I've really loved having slow mornings where I don't have to get anybody out at a certain time. And so I will be grieving that, saying goodbye. Yet I will be preparing for the goodness that comes with getting my kids up and out and having them at a place where they're stimulated all day, where they're cared for, and where they get to be with their community and peers. So it's, for me, helpful to recognize the sadness of this season is ending, maybe even a little fear that, oh my gosh, this seems like it's going to be really hard. I haven't done it in a long, long time. Will I have enough energy for this? But then also the excitement of, but I'm really excited about it. So it might be hard, but I think it's going to be worth it. So this kind of goes into the last thing that I have as far as maybe looking at how to support yourself in this transition. And it's sell yourself on it. Sell yourself that this transition is good. It's happening whether you like it or not, in most cases. And so you can go kicking and screaming, kind of like a reluctant child, like, fine, if you'll make me. I'm like that about a lot of things. Or you can really go embracing and excited about what's to come. And these are things that you can have on purpose. And so how you decide to think about this next transition, even with all the weirdness that COVID is bringing to this back to school season, you get to determine how you experience it. And so, yeah, like be bummed that COVID is still very much in the space of school, but you can decide whether it completely stamps out and kills your enthusiasm and the joy that you have that your kids get to go back and be at school, assuming that's the case for you. Or you can have a different experience. You get to choose. Those are my thoughts on transition. And so I'd love to hear what's worked for you, what hasn't worked for you, where you feel like I really want more help in this area. And so I will look forward to hearing from you. I'm at Kara Riska on Instagram. I love having conversations with you guys on there. And so let me hear from you. Tell me how the transition's going. Send me a picture of your beautiful children as they're ready to go back to school or as they have already gone back to school. And please be thinking of me as we go back on the 30th. Okay, we'll see you guys next week. One more thing before we officially wrap up this show. Sometimes when I'm listening to podcasts, I have the experience of wanting more. I'm listening at the very end thinking, I sure wish that episode didn't end. I invite you, if you feel in any way the same way, I invite you to the Special Needs Mom podcast community, which is a free group that I host on Facebook, where we as a community of fellow moms who listen to this podcast and are experiencing life in similar shoes, get to talk to one another, get to share stories, get to actually interact. I hope you'll consider joining. See you over there.